What up, YouTube? Welcome back to the tavern. Glad you're here. Grab a cold one or just grab one in general. Start sipping. Let's get into it. Today, we are going to be going over part 3 of the best and worst picks in your Dynasty Startup for 2024. I am joined by my good friend and fellow content creator, Phil Ruskin of The Extra Point FFB. Phil, how we doing?
Good, man. How are you doing? I like the jacket today, dude. You looking sharp.
Yeah, and normally I kind of look like a scrub with the basement T-shirt kind of vibe. Like, is it my wife upstairs or is it possibly my grandmother? Who knows? Maybe both if I'm really hyper unlucky, right? But no, I promise I have a day job. I'm reasonable to mediocre at it. But they let me wear a suit, so
Well,
there
hey,
you go, man.
at least you're not wearing a hoodie and a backwards hat, man. I mean, come on, let's be serious. One of us looks good, the other one looks really sharp.
Yeah, but you, like Belichick, we're also a very successful coach, and so you get to wear the hoodie and backwards cap because you've earned it.
I don't know
You've
that I'm
done
gonna
the
put
one
myself in
job
the
where that's an actual suit and tie uniform. You
I
know,
appreciate it, but let's not put me in the Belichick category. So
I don't know, man. You check him out on that roast; he was actually kind of funny. That's for
yeah, you
another.
know what?
Another story.
I was gonna say let's jump into some content, but low key, I was nervous and he honestly kind of killed it. I'm not a Belichick guy, but I was like, all right, Bill, I see you.
Yeah, yeah. By the way, Bill, if I am lucky enough to be in your ecosystem one day and you ever watch this, I would be super honored to have you on the show. Wouldn't it be sick to do like a fantasy football thing with Bill
Dude,
Belichick and go
my
over like
sis
fantasy value versus like real NFL talk? I would. Edelman, get into fantasy football and get Belichick on the show. My God, I'm in. I'll pay
My
for it. Let's go.
sister's old job, she did all this like social media stuff for his company, and like all they did was provide food to stadiums around the country. And so she was at all these different stadiums throughout the year. And one of the events that they hosted was Kentucky Derby. They did a ton of food there. And so she's in there with all the celebs and, she's doing content stuff. Bill Belichick walks right up to her. He's like, "Hi, I'm Bill." And she kind of looked at him like, "No shit, I know who you are," like, but like to him, he's just like a normal dude, like, "Hey, I'm Bill." And she was like, "Uh-huh, yeah, no kidding." But yeah, we always joke about like my sister, Julia's friend Bill. And she's my sister's one of those people that thinks that you should date age appropriately, which I think most people probably agree with. There's a gap. So now that he has a 24-year-old girlfriend or however old she is, and he's like, what, like 70, she's like completely repulsed. I'm like, still your friend Bill. Look at this guy. So anyway, not the Bill Belichick variety hour, but I just thought it was funny and share that with
I'll
you.
get one last jibe in. I know he's like 70. Tell me if I told you right now he was like 48 years old, you'd be like, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know. Bill's
Just
coaches
aged
age
himself.
coaches age differently, man. They
Yes.
age differently.
As the life of our podcast and YouTube channels go on, we'll see if you start growing Gandalf gray hair going on, we'll know that coaching is a different breed, man.
I just shaved the beard, man. I haven't seen my face in like 3 years. I shaved it last night and I was like, okay, I think I look a little bit young. I still look old, but a little bit younger. Anyway, let's do some football, man. Let's give
Let's get
what
into some
they came here
football.
for.
All right. So got a quick shout out to our good friends, not sponsors. We pay them. Actually, I give them money. They give me no discounts, but the great friends over at Dynasty League Football. They run a great shop, good content, good stuff. They provide Dynasty Startup ADP from their mock drafts that they run. This is their ADP set from May. No, not May, actually. This is from June. So it's not the most recent, but it's what I have prepared, and it's close enough. So we're going to go with it. If this is how the board falls, these are generally, we're talking about the general best and worst picks based on ADP. ADP changes all the time. It hasn't changed a ton. You're going to see some players where in your mock drafts, you're like, wait, he goes way higher. We're talking relative here. So if a pick we love just it seems unrealistic to you, again, you get the general idea. That's why we're also doing some honorable mentions so that you still get the general idea of the best and worst ranges in each round per me and Phil, which is just objectively true. So listen to us. And we're going to start. If you haven't seen our other couple of videos, go check them out on our channels. We're going to do rounds 7, 8, 9, and 10, getting us into the double digits. So I'm going to kick us off. Let's jump into it. Round 7, starting with Josh Jacobs at the 7-1, according to DLF ADP. My favorite and best pick in this round is right there. James Cook at the 7-5. I think he's a little bit mispriced here at the 7.5. I see him go consistently in the 6th round, but maybe I'm just drafting with people that like running backs more than consensus. If Cook ever falls to the 7th, even at the 7-1, I absolutely love him. He's a nice combination of he's in a great offense. He's a talented player. He's versatile. He can catch passes. And he also did his best mini Derrick Henry impression last year, where he secretly had this a ridiculous, almost like 1,400 yards from scrimmage. It was a lot. I think he can do it all. The coaching staff wanted to get him involved more last year. They talked about it in the preseason, and then it happened. So I do think he got some competition that came in, but James Cook is just a wonderful combination of good offense. The defense got a little bit more porous, which we don't love, but he is also a pass catcher, which is fine. He had one of the worst streaks of like touchdown unluckiness that'll happen when you're playing with Josh Allen. But I don't think it sticks forever. I think his touchdown, actually he could regress in the positive fashion and maybe add 1 or 2 from whatever he did last year. So combination of safe floor, guaranteed role, high-powered offense. High-powered offense gives you some ceiling potential. It helps when you're also talented. Combine the two, I think he is a smash pick in the 7th round. And my quick worth mentioning is Brian Thomas Jr. I know he was known for 9 routes, over at LSU, but I do think he's going to evolve into a pretty good wide receiver for Jacksonville. They desperately need a one who can do a lot of things, and I think even in year 1, he could take a pretty big step in the Jacksonville offense and make us completely forget Gabe Davis, which we'd all probably be thankful for. So I'm going to throw him a little bit of love too. Phil, who do you like in round 7?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, as we were chatting before the show, right, James Cook and BTJ would have been my guys as well. So I'll just add this really, really quickly. James Cook has 4 rushing touchdowns in his entire career. We know Josh Allen's the goal line back. We know Ray Davis is the new Latavius Murray. They like that bigger bodied back, but I anticipate positive touchdown regression, just like you said. Look, if he can get 1,000 yards again this season, I think that's the floor that we're expecting, and he can get to 6 to 8 touchdowns, RB1 all day. So love James Cook. I took a different route here, and I took the obviously I said I would have had Cook and BTJ, but I took Jaden Reed, and the reason I say that simply is, look, it is crowded in Green Bay. We get it. There's a lot of mouths to feed, but this is I believe it is now the 2nd or 3rd youngest offense. It was the youngest offense last year, and I think I just saw a stat the other day that said they're now the 3rd. Either way, it is one of the youngest offenses in the NFL, with a young quarterback, with a really good play caller in Matt LaFleur. And while it's crowded, I think the piece for me that's really interesting is Jaden Reed, I think, is the best of the non-X roles. And what I mean is, if you have Jaden Reed, and you have Dontavian Wicks, and you have Romeo Doubs, I think Reed's the better player out of all 3 of those. So I think he's the most likely to get on the field. Now, we know Christian Watson, who can be a great value, later in drafts. We know what he can be, but the best ability is availability, and he's not always available. So to me, give me Jaden Reed. We like it's in some of your scoring formats, this is kind of a cherry on top. You might get points for return yards. You might get points for touchdowns. There could be some of that with the new kickoff rules. I know he's been talked about. He did that at Michigan State. That was his role. So there is a possibility, if you have one of those types of scoring formats, Jaden Reed could give you some of those bonus points. I wouldn't draft him because of that. I think he's going to end up being heavily involved. The other thing I would say about Reed, and this is the other reason I picked him here in the 7th round, most of the leagues that I play in, Jaden Reed was a 3rd round rookie pick, and I'm seeing him being sold, if he's being sold right now, for a 2nd or a 1st. So if Reed has anywhere close to a comparable season this year to what he has next year, and you're the type of fantasy player that wants to capitalize on his value because it's so crowded in Green Bay, because there could be an emergence of another star, maybe Christian Watson is healthy, maybe Romeo Doubs takes that next step, I think you can sell Reed. So it's not just that I like the talent, it's also the fact that I think in the 7th round, I could be trading up to end up getting a player that, we're talking about Brian Thomas Jr. as a rookie in the exact same round. There's rookies you can see on the board that are going much higher. So if I could get a player next year in the draft in exchange for Reed, I paid a 3rd round for him. I'm drafting him in the 7th. It doesn't cost me what a 1st round rookie is going to cost me. that's somebody that could end up being on my roster next year. So lots of upside there for Jaden Reed in that high scoring offense. The other player that I actually really like here, it's Dynasty, so I have to be a little careful about this because there is an age cliff, but to me, it's Derrick Henry, and I get it. Nobody really wants Derrick Henry on their roster because of the age, but I play Dynasty in a 2 to 3 year window, and in the 7th round, the way I like to build is I'm probably loading up pretty early on my wide receivers. I might take a hero quarterback. I've probably taken a hero RB. So to go get guys that are younger, that have higher ceilings, that I know are going to be staples for my team with youth and longevity and hold value at the wide receiver position, give me Derrick Henry with the touchdown upside in the 7th round as my RB2 or RB3. And I feel really good about that for 2 years. It's not sexy. It's not James Cook. It's certainly not, Breece Hall or Christian McCaffrey or Bijan. And that's obviously not what we're talking about. But if I start my draft with Bijan and then go receiver, 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 because most leagues actually that I'm seeing are transitioning to at least 2 receivers with multiple flex, or some are now 3 wide receivers. I'd rather load up on those receivers and go get Derrick Henry late. And I think with the touchdown upside in that offense, it's just a safe pick in the 7th round. It's a safe pick.
I mean, he is pretty much bust proof. I have to give you that. But we'll argue about Derrick Henry here in a minute. I feel we'll have to get into a deep argument later on. We'll touch base on it a little bit here in a second. But interesting. Let's get to the negative side of things. Worst pick in round 7. Let's dive in. For me, the worst pick in round 7 is a player that I believe it or not, I actually like. I just think he's ridiculously mispriced here. I think he goes later. If I look at adjusted ADP, he probably goes later. But for those that are a little high on him, Tajay Spears, I like him. I'm actually starting to like him over Pollard in Dynasty. Actually, across all formats, I pretty much kind of high on Spears. I just don't love him in the 7th round in a Dynasty startup, when there are still very valuable wide receivers, and I prefer wide receiver to running back. And the fact that there are still James Cooks, DeAndre Swift isn't dead, Trey Benson goes later. There's just other players at the running back position that I like later that still have some ligaments left in their knee. Now, Tajay proved us all wrong. He had no issues. He was fantastic. Maybe he's an outlier and modern medicine's great and his body's fantastic. He takes care of himself. That being said, I think the position's brutal. I think he lacks a bit of a ceiling for me any year in Dynasty, and I just like other players better. If I hate a player, I'm going to let you know right away. I don't hate him. I like him. I don't like him in the 7th. I want to wait till the 9th. I don't like most running backs until 9-10, but he's not enough to make me want to reach a little bit earlier, where I would for a James Cook. So Tajay Spears, not my favorite pick in the 7th. It's a little too rich for my blood. My mini honorable mention is, I got to be honest, I'm not super in love with Derrick Henry in the 7th, but I do think he makes sense for some particular builds. I'll give you credit here, Phil, in that based on the way you're drafting, if you're taking a quarterback or 2 plus 5 wide receivers, or a quarterback tight end and 5 wide receivers, and you're doing that type of build, which I've definitely seen you do every time I've ever drafted with you.
Yep.
And at that point, depending on where you're going with it, Henry is a combination of a stabilizing force, bust proof. The only thing that's missing for me, and if he had this attribute, I would absolutely take him off like my potential worst pick. And that's, I'm not sure he's super tradable. Like preseason, like unless you're trading him right now to play this season, I think by the mid to like playoff run, I don't think you're getting a first for him so that you can help someone else's playoff run. They'll want to do it. And if he has the season, I think he does, maybe you can get it done. So here's where I eat my words. If Derrick Henry is worth a late first round pick to the ultimate title winner later in the year, he's not the worst pick anymore. But if he's barely sellable for a second in the playoff run, that's where I look slightly to my left and I say BTJ and James Cook go in the same round, and they go for a first, if not like 1.5 firsts, and Derrick Henry isn't even worth 1 first in the same round. If I'm correct in my assumption, it's a pretty big value disparity in the same round. And so I'm just bringing that out. Now, if you win your title with Derrick Henry, throw value out the window, go buy me a drink, and I'm all about it.
And
Who's
that's
your worst?
I think for me, just the last piece, and I pulled this real quick, it's not someone I'm building around. I think it's valuable in the right build, exactly what you said. And I'll tell you this, I had Derrick Henry in a league, and I did get a trade done. I was shocked I got this trade done, but Derrick Henry, Jerry Jeudy, and a third is what I sent away. I got a 2024 second and a 2025 first back. So it was a guy that wanted him. It was a guy that was excited. It was right after Jerry Jeudy was traded to the Browns. And it was also when Derrick Henry was very much rumored to be going to the Ravens. I don't know if he'd actually signed when I got this trade done. I remember putting Jeudy on the, putting Jeudy on the block that day, and I got the trade done that same day. So I was very excited by that, and I have to go back and look what I actually ended up drafting here with that second round pick. But yeah, it was I feel like a win for me. So my worst pick is going to be Matt Stafford here, and this could be Matt Stafford's last year in the league. And I'll just say this quite quickly. I actually think the Rams offense is going to be pretty good this year, but we're talking dynasty. We're not talking redraft. Very simply, if it's a 1 quarterback league, Matt Stafford's not making my team. If it's a 2 quarterback league, I would only take him if it was the 3rd quarterback in a super flex, 2 quarterbacks, format. I just don't trust that he's going to be around next season. And if he is, what does he have left? Is Cooper Kupp going to be around? Yes. What does he have left? Is Puka going to be, still maintaining this high target share? Probably. But I think the writing's on the wall for the Rams to start getting younger at quarterback. And, I think for me, look, they're a playoff team. I think they have the potential to be a playoff team anyway. So they're probably not getting one of the top rookies. There's not really a great option for free agents next year outside of Dak Prescott, which don't rule that out. I think Dak Prescott could wind up anywhere, and we know the Rams like to make big, crazy trades. But I just see a bridge coming after Stafford. It could be Joe Flacco first. It could be one of these Winston, Flacco, some of these guys. Could be a 3rd or 4th round rookie quarterback. But I like Stafford, if you have to take him as like a bye week fill-in if you're on the waiver wire and redraft, but I'm out in Dynasty. It just doesn't make sense. Worth mentioning is going to maybe be a spicy take for some, not for me, but for others. And it's JSN. And I just, with the new coach coming in, Mike McDonald, and what they did in Baltimore, I think that you're going to see more of a balanced attack, whereas Pete Carroll was pretty run heavy. The new Seattle offensive coordinator is from Washington. So I think they're going to throw it more than they have, but Tyler Lockett just got 2 more years on his deal. DK Metcalf is still the alpha in that offense. He's the wide receiver 1. So to me, it's JSN has to take targets away from Tyler Lockett. And the one thing, look, anybody can get hurt on any play. We know that. But Tyler Lockett, if you watch football, and you and I watch a lot of football, he catches the ball and he gets down. That's why he's been able to play for as many years as he has, is he'll find a soft spot in the zone. He'll catch it. If there's he's not a yak guy. He's not Debo. He's not built that way. So he catches it and goes down a lot of the time and has preserved his body and has preserved his health. To me, I traded JSN. I got a 1st and a 2nd for him back. I feel fine about that trade. I'll be honest. I feel really good about that because at the end of the day, I'm trading a rookie receiver for basically a rookie receiver. That's what I'm going to end up taking with that 1st round pick. And I have a hard time right now seeing the path where, barring injury, JSN just completely overtakes Tyler Lockett. New coaching staff could be different. But then you look in the 7th round here, I would rather have Brian Thomas Jr. over JSN. I mean, that's where I'm at. Whereas we get into the next round here in the 8th, we're going to talk about a couple of players. I won't ruin it for us, but we're going to talk about a couple of players in the next round. I'd rather have both of them over JSN. So I don't think it's a bad pick by any means. I just think we're talking about values, best and worst values in this round. To me, there's more valuable players later. And if I'm on the clock, depending on what my team build looks like, I'd take James Cook over JSN in this round 2 picks later. So yeah.
I like it. Let's get on to round 8, shall we?
Let's do it.
All right. My favorite and objectively the greatest pick ever in round 8. I'm going my boy Ladd McConkey. Now, I say this with a little bit of grain of salt because I'm also pretty high on my boy Brock Bowers, and Ladd was kind of wide receiver 2 to Brock Bowers a couple of times. But he is the best pick in this round because college is great, NFL is a whole different beast, and players become something much different. Okay. And when I look at what Ladd McConkey showed on the field and what I think he's going to be for the Chargers. I think he's basically going to be a slightly light version of what Cooper Kupp does for the Los Angeles Rams. I think he very much has the ability, the way he plays, his body type. I think he can be a power slot player that can move around in the formation a little bit, but that's kind of where he can live. I think him and Herbert are going to connect early and often. I don't see a ridiculous amount of 100-yard games, but I see a lot of 7, 8, 9 catches for 70, 80 yards. And in a PPR format, I think he is going to absolutely eat. I think when they can't run through the ground, they still want to run the ball. So they're going to run through the air with McConkey. They're going to move the chains. They're going to get into the red zone. And McConkey is going to absolutely eat. He's going to look like a young Keenan Allen. Not quite the crisp route runner that Keenan Allen became, but I do think McConkey can do some pretty nice things in yards after the catch and his contact balance. So I love him in the 8th. He's upside. Even if he's the wide receiver 2 in the Chargers, he's still going to be amazing here. And that's his floor, and he only gets better. My honorable mention, DeAndre Swift. He is getting up in age, but he's a pass-catching specialist. He had a better than average year last year on a team that basically never let him score a touchdown in the goal line unless Jalen Hurts was still figuring out the signal calling. And I think, for a guy that is supposed to be a pass-catching explosive guy, he did a very good James Cook impression last year of just pounding the rock, finding a gap, getting his yardage, and not complaining about it. I think he grew up a little bit last year, and I think Chicago saw that and got him at a value when if he wasn't the same player that was trying to hit 100 yards on every single play and bounce it to the outside, I think he's matured enough that Chicago can do not amazing things with him, but I think he's going to pay off his ADP, and he's going to pay it off long enough because he's being drafted like Chicago is going to be the Chicago of the last 3 to 5 years and not Chicago of the next 3 to 5 years, which is going to be a much different situation. And I think you're going to be surprised by how consistently valuable he is in that offense.
Yeah. Yeah, love it. Don't have anything else to add on those. I love what you just said, though, about Lad McConkey is that how the Chargers are going to run through the air. That was magic. That was a great take. I love it. For me, it's Keon Coleman. And look, Quentin Johnston is not on this board, which means he's not going in the first 120 picks. And he was a first-round wide receiver. So a year from now, there is a path where we are saying Keon Coleman is garbage. He's a bust. Well, how did you not see this coming? And the truth is that hindsight bias is very real, especially in fantasy. On the opposite side of that coin, we have to make the decisions based on the information we have today. And what we know today is that Khalil Shakir is 24 years old and has been in Buffalo, and he's been good, not great. Steph Diggs is gone. Gabe Davis is gone. It's a 42% market share. It's 315 targets. I've said ad nauseum on this show, on my own show, how I believe that Dalton Kincaid and James Cook are the big winners in the Steph Diggs trade away because they are both obviously Kincaid, but Cook's specialty is as a pass catcher and not a rushing touchdown guy. But where are the rest of those targets going to go? Because Curtis Samuel's 28 years old, and I get it. Joe Brady, it's his guy, and he knows him. But to me, Curtis Samuel is a rental. Keon Coleman is a contested catch specialist. He's a big body wide receiver. He can play the X. He's young. He's got time to learn and mature and grow in a Josh Allen-led offense. And I think if you can sit here and say, oh, Coleman's going to be a bust, and how did you not see it coming? You could easily make the case, and I am making the case. I see the path for him to be extremely successful. And if it works the way that we think it will, you are not getting Keon Coleman in the 8th round next year. You'll never get him at this price again. It'll be inside easily the top 5 rounds, probably inside the top 36 wide receivers. He may be going at the back of the 3rd, early 4th round. So to get somebody who in an offense that we know and we believe in, but we've seen before, to get a player in that type of an offense where the path is there for him, to me, it's a great value. It's a great pick. I wasn't super, I'll be honest, I wasn't super high on Coleman coming out. I had some questions about him as I've done my homework, as I've watched film, as I've studied. I like him. I think he's going to work. I think he's going to be really good. And in the 8th round, give me Keon Coleman all day. The other one I think is interesting is it's a caveat. And even if you can't see our show doc, but it's got a couple asterisks next to it. It's Rashee Rice. And I get it. Rashee Rice is scary. We don't know what the suspension is going to look like. We don't even know if there is going to be a suspension. We assume there will be. It could be 2 games. It could be 4. It could be 12. It could be the whole season. But unless it's the whole season and Xavier Worthy just emerges, if it's a 4-game suspension, Rashee Rice is going to be fine. And, you're not going to get him at this price later. And I say that it's a caveat because if Rashee Rice hadn't gotten in trouble, he wouldn't be here in the 8th round. It's not. He wouldn't. He'd at least be 2 rounds higher. It's Patrick Mahomes' number 2 weapon. We haven't seen Xavier Worthy catch a pass yet. There is some risk built in there. We have seen Rice. So to me, I have Rashee Rice. I'm holding. I'm not trading him. I'm not trading for him. I'm not trading him away. I'm just holding in kind of, NFL purgatory. But I say this again with a grain of salt. If you can get Rashee Rice as a late round flyer, as your wide receiver 4 or 5, take the shot because the upside is built in.
It's gross, but it's also not gross. But buying the troublemaker on, like the Steelers or something like that, or the Jets would be rough. But Kansas City, if you're going to buy in on a troublemaker, I mean, that's where I'm going with it.
Let me just pause really quick. Let me ask you this question. Who would you rather have right now, Rashee Rice or Jordan Addison?
Jordan Addison.
Okay. Because Jordan Addison man, he had the speeding incident last year. He had the DUI this year. He's drinking again yesterday on Instagram. Like, I mean, dude's got Kevin O'Connell might need to drive over to drive the speed limit wearing a seatbelt over to Mr. Addison's house and say, "Come with me, young man. You're going to live in the facility for a while."
Hey, man, I don't doubt that he needs a little bit of that, but I think there's a big difference. Okay.
Yeah.
When he saw them flashing lights, he took one more shot and said, "It's going to be a late night. Take me in."
He fell asleep.
He was just, you know what I'm saying? Like, he just said, "All right, well, this is what happens next." Rashee Rice panicked like a 12-year-old and ran.
Yeah,
There's a big difference. All right. One guy said, "Look, it's the preseason. And by the way, I already did my thing my rookie year, and it was a lot better than yours. So, hey, you know what? You gotta earn your right to go screw around a little bit. And you have not yet." But he's got more rings than I do over there, Rashee. So good for you. Let's keep moving. Where are we at here? We are on worst round 8. Hate to say it. Love the player. Hate him in Dynasty. Keenan Allen. Don't waste your pick. Yeah. Unless you're going to win the league this year, and you better win the league this year. And everyone who's ever said that has a story for you that doesn't end so well. I can't justify him in the 8th when there are players that arguably could finish adjacent to him and still have 10 more years in the NFL.
Yep.
It's ridiculous that he's going there. I get it. There's a lot of we've forgotten that changing teams is usually a net negative, not a net positive. We just forgot because the last couple of times it's worked out okay. It usually doesn't. And I think this is the time where it's going to work out okay for the NFL, not for fantasy. I think he's going to be serviceable, but there's just not going to be enough volume for him to truly eat and to have a truly elite enough ceiling that you can get what you paid for a season and a half at the 8-11. If I'm proven wrong, I will go buy a signed Keenan Allen jersey immediately and say this man is something special doing what he's doing at his age. And I hope he does. If you can see in the background, I'm a diehard Bears fan. I want him to be it. I'm just not paying that price in Dynasty. Again, I think he's productive, but I think it's a floor play, not a ceiling play. And he's just way too old to have any relevance. He is an injury followed by half of an injury away from being Mike Williams. And that's too much. I just don't love him in Dynasty. Love the player, and I hope he crushes it and helps the Bears transition a little bit. My honorable mention is Alvin Kamara. Hate Alvin Kamara at the 8-10. Hate him in Dynasty. I tell you what, I hate him in redraft this year, and I was pretty high on him. I was buying the dip last year in redraft. My quick take on Kamara is he is a floor play in a round where you want to start looking at upside. It just doesn't make any sense for me. I think he's going to lose some early down work to other running backs. And I say other running backs because I don't know who, but it will be one of several, and it could even be a tight end. I don't think he gets the same passing game usage because they're going to have to evolve the offense to not include him because he might not be there for very much longer, and they're going to have to do something with it. So the fact that his goal line vulture, he gets goal line vultured from the weird offense where sometimes Taysom gets in. He gets vultured from early down work. He's really just a pass catching specialist. So he's similar to Eckler, but he's going in the 8th when really he should go side by side with Eckler in likely the 11th. And he's just getting the Kamara name bump where we haven't officially put him into purgatory with Eckler where he belongs. And he is not nearly talented enough at this point in his career on a dreadful offense to be drafted at the 8-10 when you can still have DeAndre Swift at the 8-12, and then you got Zamir White, Trey Benson. Even like when you're making Najee Harris look like a good dynasty asset, you need to pass. And not feeling him at the 8-10. Who's your worst?
Yeah, 694 rushing yards last year at age 28. Not that much younger than Eckler. So my worst is interesting, and I just was taking some quick notes here. My worst is Michael Penix Jr. And look, let me say this because it's important. Michael Penix Jr. is a good football player. If Michael Penix Jr. had not gotten drafted to the Falcons, I had him as my QB3 coming out in this class. I had him ahead of McCarthy. I had him ahead of May. Now, I think the athleticism of May eventually will outwin what we expect to see from Penix because of the age and Penix's documented injury history. But from a quarterback ready to step into an NFL role, that's how I saw it. Now, obviously, going to the Falcons just killed it. Here's why I think it's a bad pick. In a single quarterback league, I only want Penix as on my taxi squad. I just don't need him. And I just looked up. I have Penix in two places. I have Penix in a single quarterback lead where my quarterbacks are Anthony Richardson, and then I used the 203 to draft Jaden Daniels this year because I had Derek Carr as my backup. So I was able to replace Carr with Daniels. Penix was a ridiculous value in the third round, so I grabbed him and I'm stashing him on my taxi squad. It's a single quarterback league. My hope is that he does develop in the next 2 years. And I never want anything to happen to players. But if Kirk Cousins isn't healthy and Penix has to play, then I can trade him because I feel great with Richardson and Daniels. I don't want you to burn the pick. It's the same thing you just said about Kamara. In a single quarterback league, don't burn the pick on Penix. Trade for him later if he develops, or trade for him next season if it's an early trade to get in early before the price goes higher. It's just a burn because unless Cousins is hurt, he's not playing this season for sure. And the guy's old. So it's a challenge. In a super flex league, I have Penix in a quarterback. Excuse me, my quarterbacks are Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts with Derek Carr on my bench. So, and that was a startup. So I didn't have to use any rookie picks. Carr is going to play for 2 years. The contract says that he's going to play for 2 years. If Penix is the guy in the next 2 years, I have a backup for Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts. If he doesn't, then whatever. It's on my taxi squad. It doesn't hurt me. But in the 8th round, we've already talked about the guys that we like. I would take all of those skill position players over Penix, the quarterback. And honestly, I would probably take a couple flyers on a couple of other quarterbacks as well. The other one is Aaron Rodgers, and it's almost carbon copy, rinse and repeat of what I just said about Matt Stafford. He's 38 years old, which is interesting. I'm going to make this argument because it could be a Kirk Cousins. You could just insert the name Kirk Cousins. But he's 38 years old, coming off of an Achilles. We don't know how much longer he's going to play. The Jets win now window is closing. I know that doesn't sound what Jets fans want to hear because they haven't had their win now window open, but Aaron Rodgers didn't play last year. He played 5 snaps. So to me, again, in a super flex league, you're basically only getting Rodgers for this season. Maybe next year, but that's risky. I'd rather have Justin Fields. You know what I mean? Like, I'd rather have the shot on Justin Fields with the youth, the athleticism. He's not a great quarterback, but at the end of the day, guy runs. And I mean, if you can't beat Russell Wilson out of a job, then maybe you really don't deserve to be in the league. You know what I mean? So I think to me, Penix and Rodgers find a better pick in the 8th round. We've talked about the guys we liked. And as you and I transition to the 9th round, I would take these guys we like in the 9th over both those players as well.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And to follow up on your Penix pick, just 2 things. One, if you're in a league where the entire league somehow pays up through 5-6 seasons, okay, fine. That's kind of, we've all agreed we're all in this for the super long haul. Okay, maybe we're starting there. But let me just tell you this, right? By the time Penix is a good pick, Justin Fields is going to be a better pick around later. So if you're planning on waiting that long for Penix to do his thing, you probably just take Justin Fields and get a better, asset. At least what I think is going to happen with Fields over the next, 2-3 years when he takes over.
He's already 24. I mean, well,
Penix older than Fields.
Yeah, Penix is so like, this is what's wild. Ready? I'll give you this. So in 4 years, Michael Penix is 24 years old today. In 2 years, he will be 26 and probably out of the league. In 2 years, Anthony Richardson will only be 24. That's what I mean. Like Jaden Daniels, only be 23. So like these guys
Oh,
that are
man.
starters that have been in the league are going to still be younger with actual NFL game experience before Penix ever, unless crazy injuries, and before Penix ever takes a snap.
What a
It's
wild
tough.
ride Penix's private life probably is, because he
How did
hears all these
someone not
things.
lose it? How did first of all, let's just say this. I feel terrible for the kid because you waited your whole life to be drafted and you got drafted in the top 10. How did someone in Atlanta not lose a job over this pick? I mean, we don't have time for that, but we'll talk about that on another show. Let's get into the 9th round. But
Yeah, we
man,
might have to talk about that in your show a little bit.
yeah,
We'll
maybe. We'll
get there.
see. We'll see if we get there. Yeah.
All right, man. Round 9, best pick by far in round 9, because he doesn't go in the round 9 anymore, I don't think, but he's getting slept on a little bit, and I've seen him there a little bit. I think in newer ADP, he probably goes mid 8th to late 8th, but Trey Benson is the best pick in round 9. My goodness, do I love me some Trey Benson. Right before Brooks started getting really steamed up as like the clear and away RB1 in this class, there was a lot of like, is it Brooks? Is it Benson? Who's RB1? It was going back and forth. He got drafted to what already was at times an explosive offense, going to get a lot better with all the the weapons added to it. They can put up a lot of points. That's going to be good for Benson. I think he can do a little bit of Jahmyr Gibbs light, where he doesn't need a high snap share because of his ability to catch passes and be very explosive. I think he functions similar like a Tony Pollard, where actually a small snap share allows him to consistently be what he needs to be on that play, keeping his yards per touch very high. His explosive breakout run of 20 plus should be pretty good. I like him. I'm farther down on him this year than a lot of people are. A lot of people are like, he could be a late season winner. I think he actually stays RB2 all season long, and I think that is perfectly okay, because I think as RB2, he might outscore the RB1 in fantasy. He'll be the
Yes.
RB2 in the NFL. He might be the RB1 in fantasy, similar to a Gibbs Montgomery. It's my favorite analogy and honestly, it works really well for Connor too, because Connor and Montgomery have a very similar style. They can be bruising. They can do a lot of things. They've got some fundamentals, occasionally get banged up. And so Trey Benson is my much cheaper version, less talented, albeit, but he's got some aspects of Jahmyr Gibbs. I like running backs who don't need 60% snap share to be valuable, because the running back landscape is becoming, everybody is in a mixed backfield. I want a guy that in a mixed backfield, it doesn't matter. They're still great. And I think he can do that for a long time. Love Trey Benson. My honorable mention is Ramondre Stevenson. I still like Ramondre. I'm buying the dip here. He got a contract, so at a minimum, running backs of his age, our biggest question mark is, what is their future? What does even next year look like? Right? Next year. And, he got enough money that while the offense is bad, I think we all think it's only going to get better, and it could get a lot better. In a division whose offenses are getting a lot better, to a team that might play a more interesting version of football compared to what they have been. And I think it had a significantly down year last year, when, similar to, remember Najee Harris's rookie year?
Yep.
Much different player. Except I think Ramondre, based on how he's used, can still get back to those good pass catching days, because I think they'll have an offense that's worth being in games occasionally and still throwing the ball a little bit. And I think Ramondre definitely stands to benefit. They've got a lot of rookies at wide receiver. They just have 2 billion wide receivers in general. But if the rookies get playing time, they're inexperienced. He'll actually be one of the veterans that can just consistently see targets, see touches. I don't think he's a massive upside guy anymore. I don't see that. But I think in terms of how safe the floors are, Zamir White could be irrelevant much faster than an older Ramondre Stevenson in a similar round. And so that's why I'm a little bit elevated on Ramondre. Don't love him, but I certainly don't hate him. And I think he is a definition of a value. Who do you like?
Yeah, agreed. I like those takes. To me, this is where the real definition of value comes into play, because while these two players that I'm going to talk about may not be the sexiest players at their position, they are mispriced. And here's, I'm going to start with George Kittle. George Kittle's getting older. We get it, we know it, and the days are, I won't say numbered, but right, George is 30 years old, so he's a year older than Mark Andrews. Excuse me, 2 years older than Mark Andrews. Kelsey is an anomaly. Kelsey's 32, 33 years old, right? So I think George probably has 2 to 3 years left. George Kittle finished as tight end 5. He had the most receiving yards in the NFL last year out of any tight end. He was the only tight end last season to break 1,000 yards. And he did it on 90 targets. So he got 30 targets less than Kelsey. He got 50 targets less than Ingram. And he got 30 targets less than Sam Laporta, who was the number one tight end. And Sam Laporta, keep in mind, scored 10 touchdowns. So on 120 targets, he went for 889 and 10. Kittle was 963. Excuse me. I'm looking at Evan Ingram here. Kittle, I just lost him. Where did he go? It's 1020 on the yardage. And then I have to find his, give me 1 second. There it is, 1020 and 6. So this is an offense that is arguably the number one offense, if not the second best offense in the NFL, in a very, very crowded room. But the price that you are paying for Mark Andrews, Sam Laporta, Trey McBride in a dynasty startup, we've already covered these players, and you can see them on the board here. Mark Andrews in the 5th, Dalton Kincaid in the 6th. You can see barely at the top of the screen there in the 3rd round, Sam Laporta. In the 4th round, Trey McBride. Now, I get it. He outperformed these players last year, Kittle, other than Laporta. It could be a very different argument this season in terms of fantasy finish. But we're talking about what you're looking for from a tight end is ceiling. George Kittle can win you a week. You know, if you're watching Receiver right now on a Netflix, he had 3 touchdowns on his birthday, and I'm pretty sure he's had 3 catches and all 3 were touchdowns. So, right, like it's you're going to get some weeks with Kittle where he's going to disappear. But that's true of most receivers. And you could talk about Devontae Adams disappearing last week or disappearing on weeks and then just coming back and getting you absolute crushing weeks. In the 9th round, and I'm usually pretty on brand for me, a late round drafter, give me George Kittle and give me a young Ben Sinnott real late. And I'll take Kittle for 2 years and hope Sinnott develops into my tight end of the future so that I'm not having to pay a premium, for a McBride, for an Andrews, for a Laporta. I just think in the 9th round, you're not going to find a ceiling performance like that of someone who can finish in the top 5 at their position that late consistently. And George Kittle will give you that. The other one that I like here is actually right next to him on the board. It's Christian Watson. Look, Christian Watson's had his injuries. He's been out of the lineup. He went to some sort of a medical institute to do a, full study on his hamstring and found out that he had less tensile strength or something, 30% less. And I don't know all the numbers off the top of my head, but basically he says he's fixed it. He's cut that number in half. He's at like 15% difference between his legs. And ideally he'd like to get down to 6 or 7. Look, the truth is that Christian Watson is the X. He's the alpha in that offense when healthy. He had 7 touchdowns his rookie season and 5 last year in basically almost half as many games. So when he's on the field, he's great. And that's always been his biggest issue. But again, in the 9th round, give me the upside of a guy that is a different body type and a different archetype than the rest of the receivers in that room, attached to Jordan Love. And at 6'4", 208, can he go and do some of the Mike Evans contested ball situations in the end zone? That's where Mike Evans has made a living. I think Christian Watson obviously can take the top off of defense, but he can also score touchdowns, and touchdowns win fantasy games. So in the 9th, give me Kittle, give me Watson, and I'm very happy.
I like it. Those are 2 guys that would have definitely been on my list as well. Kittle still loves football. Guys get older, they fall out of love with the game. They're independently wealthy. Getting beat up for money is less fun at that point. And I think that takes a toll mentally. I think first mentally it goes, and that drains into the physicalness, and just it affects everything. You watch him on receiver, and not just on receiver. We knew who he was before receiver. Sure. I think people that have that youthful mentality, he's playing a kid's game, he knows it, and he is super happy about it every second of every day. I think that's actually going to keep him a year or 2 younger physically and mentally than everyone else. And I do think that gives him a year or 2 shelf life longer than everyone else. Just take his age, subtract 2 from it, and pretend that's his real age. And I think that's honestly a good way of looking at where he is in his career and what he'll do. And then all of a sudden makes him not some old guy. And I think that's why he's sneaky good. So love him. You already know I love Christian Watson. Everything I would say is everything you have said. But Kittle, really, really sneaky. Like him a lot. Let's get to the ugly. Round 9. Ugly nasty boys. Najee Harris, man, I used to love you, but you're my worst in round 9. And Javonte right next to him. Don't think you're out of the woods because I kind of hate you too. But Najee's 2 years older than Javonte. Okay. I'm going to give Javonte the break that, he's not, I don't think he's breaking out. I think that ship has sailed. Do I think he can maybe remain serviceable? And do what happens? He's on a year where does he go next year? I don't know. Tony Pollard's situation looked bad, but if Javonte ends up in a Tony Pollard-esque situation next year as a more talented, younger player, it's not the end of the world. Najee had a ridiculous amount of college touches. He has a lot of touches. He went from a really good back to he's just beat up, not quite as good. I don't see the pathway for Najee to be great this season, and I don't see a path to him being good next year at a position I already don't want to draft. And so I don't want to find myself needing him when there are adjacent players. Because I'm not just going to completely rip on Najee. I think he's talented. I still think he's kind of maybe slept on in redraft a touch. There's just such a lack of a ceiling at this point, and that's what's killing me. Where Monty has a significantly higher ceiling because of the offense. Jalen Warren has a significantly higher ceiling because the injury to Najee and his ability to just do, Ramondre magic in third down situations. You look at Joe Mixon down at 10-4. Why would you take Najee over Mixon when you have a better offensive ecosystem, the ability to actually play meaningful games for your fantasy football team? Najee is just, at best, the rest of your team has to be so good for Najee to be a valuable piece of your team, or something else had to go wrong where Najee was the least of several evils. When you're talking about a guy like that, just don't make the mistakes earlier so you end up with that in round 9. Don't do it. Is an ugly pick. And just to honorable mention, not in love with Chris Godwin in Dynasty. Very specifically Dynasty. I actually like him in redraft. I think he's going to have a very good season. My challenge is he's still the wide receiver 2 on the team. I think it's a team that does want to run the ball a lot because they don't want Baker to throw the ball any more than he has to. Baker is 1 week away from spiraling off the face of this earth, and we all know it. He looked good last year. Sell him while you can and hope you already did. Okay.
Yes.
Jalen McMillan is phenomenal. I think he has a real shot to, not this year, but like next year, be like a late breakout Puka, or, if you find a better like year 2 breakout analogy. But Jalen McMillan's the real deal. And I think Godwin, if Godwin doesn't have a great season this year, it's not looking good for him. He's too middle of the road. There are so many good wide receivers in 2024 with this rookie class. I do not want to be investing in sort of middling aging wide receivers. If I'm going to go that route, give me Devontae or something where it really pays off. Yeah. Godwin's too much of a half measure as an aging veteran in dynasty fantasy football. He's a mistake from a game theory standpoint. And that's where I have him. Love him in redraft, though, just to save face a little bit. Round 9, Phil. Who's your nasty boys?
Yeah, I mean, it's Geno, and I feel like all my bad, not to say bad, all my least favorite, worst picks have been the aging quarterbacks. And I mean, look, Sam Howell was acquired from the Commanders this offseason, and there was potential that he would even replace Geno as early as this season. I don't think that's happening. I do think that Geno's going to be the starter, and barring injury, will be the starter for the season. But the writing's on the wall with the acquisition of Howell, and don't rule out a trade for the Seahawks for another quarterback for next year, or even using a draft pick. I mentioned I like the offensive coordinator that's coming in. I actually like what the Seahawks are going to be doing, but that doesn't mean that Geno has to be the guy going forward long-term in Dynasty for them to do what they're looking to do from a more balanced attack. I just can't get on board with it. Again, if I'm in a super flex league, I would take Geno as my QB3, hoping that I've got 2 other guys that are starters, and then I'd feel great about Geno being, my bye week, starter, or my weekly fill-in if I really need someone in a pinch. But it's not someone I'm building around, and it's certainly not somebody that I'm going to actually go ahead and try to target in drafts. I'm out on Geno. The age, just the way that I think the writing's on the wall for him. And if my memory's right, I didn't fact check myself on this, but I think this is the last year or second to last year of his contract. I think it's the last year of his contract. So
is it a voidable year situation where he actually has one more year, but it's a fake year?
That maybe sounds more accurate, but either way, it's not like he's signing a brand new deal with guaranteed money. They're not committing to him. That's really my point.
I totally agree. I traded him away. Not a big fan. He might not finish this year. Might be good for the team.
I mean, I'll say this. I actually traded for Geno. Hear me out. I traded for Geno in a league this year. It cost me a late third round pick that I didn't care about. And the reason that I traded for Geno was it's a two quarterbacks, not super flex. You have to start two. I have Anthony Richardson and Jordan Love as my two quarterbacks. I drafted Drake May. So I took Geno as my kind of bridge third quarterback in that super flex league this year because Drake May won't play at least the first 4, maybe 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks. He may not play at all. It just kind of depends. We don't anticipate the Patriots are going to win a lot of games. So I think he'll be like Will Levis, probably play the second half of the year. But I didn't want to go into a season with Richardson, Love, and really nobody else in that room. So to get Geno as basically a bridge starter until Drake May hopefully develops into my third quarterback, that I feel good about. But again, he's still my third quarterback in a super flex and a 2 quarterback league. So yeah.
But you're not really buying a quarterback. You bought a bridge to your actual roster,
yeah,
and you're a title contending team that just can't afford a major slip up because the rest of your roster is going to stare you at the face like, what did you do here, man? Give up the second to the third or whatever. Go win a title.
Yep.
And that's worth it. So I agree. Not a big fan. As much as I wish that team would do better things. Disappointing last year. We'll see what happens this year. Should we finish this thing up? Get to round 10?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Round 10. Last round of this video. We're going to get through at least a couple more rounds in this video series, though. I'm going to kick it off. I'm going to steal yours. I know we've got a show doc here. We've already agreed that I'm going to steal it, but it's the only time I get to steal this because this is one of Phil's favorite players. But he's turned me on to him. I already liked him, but I like him even more. Ricky Pearsall of the San Francisco 49ers. First round, rookie big. Absolutely love him. Okay. I'll give you the short take on Ricky Pearsall. One, already a very talented player on a ridiculously talented offense with aging pieces where he is one of the future pieces that will emerge. And I think him and Purdy are going to be standouts in a year or two on that team when everyone else goes bye-bye. Second point, Ayuk or Debo, one or both is absolutely leaving. Ayuk already requests the trade. I think the team would rather keep Ayuk and trade Debo. Debo's he's a functional heart and soul of that team in very non-football ways, though, too. The point is, we know that one of them or both of them are leaving at some point, so he has a built-in... If that trade happened yesterday, where's Ricky Pearsall's value this year? I mean, it doesn't skyrocket, but it definitely goes up, and you look at him as a completely different asset. He's going to be looked at much more like a Keon Coleman than he is Ricky Pearsall on a fantastic team. So when everything that will and could conceivably happen increases his value, you got to look at him as a smash value because you're drafting him when you know there's a built-in event that's going to give him a 2-round bump minimum. I like that being built in. And if you have a roster where you don't, or not even trying to win this year, you set up a young team so that year 2 breakouts can start your window next year. He's just a smash pick. And also don't forget, he's just a ridiculously talented player. He has fantastic hands. Don't count the fact that he might make very valuable catches this year. Not good for fantasy this year, in my opinion, but it's more important as a rookie to make NFL contributions than fantasy. So that in year 2, when the NFL says, you're our guy, we need you to win games, then they can really, truly come through for you in fantasy when they have the buy-in of the locker room and the coaching staff. He'll do that in spades this year. My honorable mention, one of your other favorite guys, I'd probably just take your whole take here. I think if you could copy and paste everything I'm saying, you'd be very happy about it. Jaylen Warren. What an animal. I think he actually came out with some workout videos recently. Maybe you know something about that, but he looked pretty good. I saw some getting steamed up a little bit more. He's looking pretty mean. Love Jaylen Warren. RB 1B, 1A, depends on the game and situation for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's talented. He's a good pass catcher. He's extremely explosive. I like that he can run it in from 20 yards out, so Najee won't even get the red zone carry. And I think Russell Wilson has a proclivity for... He's a weird dude, but he's smart enough that he knows to dump it off. And I don't think he's going to be mobile forever. And I do think there's going to be lots of third down passes to Jaylen Warren. I can't tell you how many times as the Chris Carson owner, I saw Russell Wilson actively looking for Chris Carson in places of the field I didn't think Chris Carson would be, like catching 40-yard touchdowns. Love to see me a Jaylen Warren 40-yard touchdown to the corner on a wheel route. That would be fun watching. I think it happens. I'd like me some Jaylen Warren.
Love it. Mine is baffling. I'm just going to say that. The fact that David Montgomery is in the 10th round, to me, it defies logic. And the Lions are not up and coming. The Lions have arrived, and it to me doesn't make sense why this is not a handcuff. This is not a backup running back. This is a 1A, 1B, and I would even say it's a 1A, 1A.2. You know what I mean? Like it's this there is a defined role for each of Gibbs and Monty in this offense. And while we don't want to speak things into existence, if one of these running backs misses time, the other one, I mean, they're both going to finish as RB ones and twos potentially anyway, right? But to me, it just doesn't make sense. It's a guy who inherited the Jamal Williams touchdown role. Jahmyr Gibbs is clearly the pass catcher, and we love Gibbs. Gibbs is a first round, if not a second round pick. He can take it to the house, but Gibbs is not the goal line guy. Right? He's going to get some goal line work. We saw that happen, but Monty is the goal line back, and Jared Goff is never, I mean, maybe a QB sneak or like a bootleg once or twice a season. Jared Goff is not Jalen Hurts. He's not Josh Allen. He's not Anthony Richardson that's vulturing touchdowns from these running backs. So Monty's going to get his, and at the end of the day, I just don't understand this 10th round. And again, it's July. This will change. To me, Monty needs to be going in the 7th or 8th round. If you look at some of these guys in the 7th round, like Tajay Spears is there, Derrick Henry is there. I know I liked Henry as a value there in the 7th, but to me, Derrick Henry should be going in the 10th, and Monty should be going in the 7th, right? Like that should be the inverse relationship there. And I don't think you need to worry about, Gibbs is going to take the second-year leap. Gibbs can take the second-year leap, and Monty can still be relevant. And I think that's something that fantasy and dynasty players especially need to remember is Monty still has a contract. He's still going to be there. And I'll be honest, because Gibbs is on that rookie contract and the Lions, I think, are probably still going to be in the playoff hunt for the next 2 to 3 years. It actually wouldn't shock me to see Monty get a 2-year extension on top of his contract. And they just keep that kind of fire and ice or, whatever you want to call it, 1-2 punch, however you want to refer to it. I wouldn't be shocked if Monty and Gibbs stay together in that backfield for the next 4 years. It wouldn't shock me. So give me David Montgomery in the 10th all day. I have massive exposure to him in the best ball tournaments I'm in right now. He's on a ton of my dynasty rosters. To me, David Montgomery is the best. I say that on purpose. The absolute best 1B, backup running back in the whole NFL.
Amen. He's on my wall. I miss him. I miss him dearly. I like him better than Swift. Why did we have to let him go in division?
Yeah, in division hurts. Yeah.
Last year it didn't hurt when we're not going anywhere, and Detroit clearly was. This year when we're kind of on the ascension, now it's like, oh no.
Yeah. Ask Giants fans how they're going to feel when Saquon has 3 or 4 touchdowns over the 2 games they play the Eagles this season. They're not going to enjoy that very much at all. So
yeah, the Lions fans or the Giants fans are doing this year what I was doing last year, the tail end of last year with my Bears. Just drinking a lot.
I was going to say,
they get to talk about neighbors. I get to talk about Rome, but during a fun season. They get to talk about neighbors as like a man. I hope he's doing okay mentally with what.
Yeah. You got it, man.
Oh man! All right, let's get into the dirt of round 10. Right, our least favorite picks in round 10. Let's wrap this thing up. I'm not a big fan of Dallas Goedert in the 10th. It's just there's other options around him that I like better. There's some younger upside guys that go a little bit later that I think they'll underproduce compared to Goddard, but I get them for a lot longer. I don't see Goddard as, especially with the addition of Saquon. You forget Saquon, and I think Goddard kind of got thrust into this weird, like they have 2 wide receivers and then Goddard. And Hurts very much liked to do Goddard just kind of found himself open on a lot of we just need a first down, we'll get it to Goddard. But when I was watching the game, it just kind of felt like he was very Dalton Schultz-like in that, yeah, you got a good quarterback and a high-powered offense, and sometimes that works for you. But I just don't think that you're the one that's doing everything. I don't think that there's a force that's going to propel you into doing great things. I think your red zone opportunities are significantly diminished on that offense, which tight ends kind of live and die by how many touchdowns they can at least have in the range of outcomes, and his is far too low for him to be very relevant for me. And when I look at where he's going, let's pause for a second. Goddard's not terrible. It's just that this year there's a lot of great rookies, and there's still rookies here that I absolutely love, and I would punt tight end for several rounds while I get to sweep up. But just look in round 10, you can still take Williams over on Detroit, is still hyper young, has so much room. Ricky Pearsall goes after Goddard. That's crazy. That's just crazy. In a year, he could be the wide receiver 1 for San Francisco over a middling tight end. The upside next year, this is a dynasty format that you can take in this round and next versus Goddard. It just seems mispriced, and I think he probably could go 2, 3, 4 rounds later, and it just wouldn't matter. He's unexciting in a format where you need to make things happen. He's a guy I would buy for cheap to fill a spot. I wouldn't draft him. I would buy him after mistakes were made or bad things happen. And my honorable mention is I'm not super in love with Calvin Ridley here from a dynasty format. I think he's going to be very good for redraft, like very, very good for redraft. And, maybe he actually has some pretty significant upside in year 2 when other things, who am I thinking of? When Nuke probably retires, walks away, something happens.
Oh.
I just don't think that Ridley has to be good in that offense. I don't think that offense has to be good. I think that he could have some splash games and then disappear, and he could very much be a better version of Gabe Davis rather than like Devontae Adams. There's too many range of outcomes where he's not consistent enough to love him, where he's not really a winner. He's like a piece you add to a championship team, but not a person that gets you to the championship. I don't know. I'm in a weird spot where I like him a lot in redraft, but in Dynasty, again, it has to do with the names around him. Objectively, he should put up some points and is good in what could be a good offense. But I'm taking Hollywood more. I'm taking all these guys who have a lot more. They have more similar upside this year. Hollywood is similar upside, but he's younger and a better offense with a better quarterback. And all the other guys just have other things going on. So that's kind of where I'm at. What were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say, I think it's okay to like a guy in redraft and not in Dynasty. I mean, I think that's a very fair take, right? Like, there are a lot of people that love Derrick Henry for this season only in redraft and do not want him on their Dynasty teams. I'm actually one of them. I think it's a good value for 2 years if you've built a certain way. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, Calvin Ridley, to me, I don't know. It's a question of, do you trust Levis? Do you trust the offense? Do you think there's enough volume?
That's too many questions for me. Like,
that's what I mean.
Betting on Levis, but guys, we got to be honest about. I'm a range of outcomes guy. We both are, right? But specifically in Dynasty, it's not my take. I look at what do I think the percentiles that they kind of fall in these buckets, and also how many buckets are there realistically. And I think there are too many like Justin Fields disaster of an offense situations where Levis ain't good. Yeah. The O-line got better, we think. What do you know about O-lines? It's not necessarily about the talent, like an all-star team. Like all-star teams don't work. They're all talented. They don't work together. Offensive lines require some chemistry and coaching, even if they're individually talented. I don't know that they're going to come together fast enough or at all. The Bears said they were improving their offensive line every year for like the last 10 years.
Yeah.
It never happened. Yeah, it might never happen. The fact that could happen to a guy getting paid that much money, it's a bigger. Tennessee made a bigger mistake signing him than you'll ever make drafting him. So at least you have that, but not my favorite. Phil, wrap us up, man. Who are you not loving?
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest, man. It's right next to Calvin Ridley. It's Hollywood Brown. I just pulled these stats because I just couldn't believe it, and I'm still having a hard time seeing about to repeat what I'm seeing. Hollywood Brown has only finished as a wide receiver 2 once in his career. Did you know that? I didn't know that. I would have said maybe twice or 3 times, and I would have said, at least one of those seasons in Baltimore. In 2021 in Baltimore, he was wide receiver 24.5 PPR. That is his highest ever finish. He's only ever been over 1,000 yards once. So, look, he's 27. He's been in the league 5 years. He's on his 3rd team. The biggest thing for me is contracts matter in Dynasty, and he only has a 1-year contract. That's the biggest thing for me. If the Chiefs believed in him so much, and let's remember, I believe Rashee Rice had gotten in trouble when they signed him. It may be the other way. Maybe the other way, that they signed Brown earlier in free agency before Rice got in trouble. But they still went out and drafted Xavier Worthy. They have Travis Kelce. I think he's a player that, if you want to take him, if you've got Mahomes and, you want to take him in best ball and stack him up for this season, go for it. If it's a redraft league and you've got Mahomes and you want to get some correlation and get Hollywood late, go for it. But in Dynasty, I'm out. I'm out on Hollywood, and I'm out for two reasons. Number one, we've never seen a higher than a wide receiver 24 finish. I don't care about it. I mean, it's not like he was playing with bums. He was playing with Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray. I mean, let's be honest. Sure, it's not Mahomes, but it's not that far off. It's not like he was playing with Zach Wilson. So, you know what I mean? Like, to me, it's a 1-year contract doesn't inspire confidence. So I just don't see. Look, unless Rashee Rice gets suspended for the whole season and Xavier Worthy's just not the guy, Hollywood's. I just don't think he's going to have the role. You know what I mean? Like, I think Worthy's going to have a role. I think Rashee Rice probably gets 4 to 8 games. At some point, he'll come back. It's always Travis Kelce's offense. So, yeah, I'm out. It's just not a player that I want on my team. I'm happy to let someone else make the I won't say mistake. I'm happy to let someone else draft him and give me every other wide receiver you see in this round over Hollywood. The last one, just really quickly, is Brian Robinson. And I need to bring this up because this is important. I understand Washington is kind of a brand new team. We get it. They get a little bit of a free pass with new ownership, new head coach, new scheme. Everything is kind of a fresh reset. But yes, Brian Robinson got shot his rookie year, like a week before the season. He didn't have competition last year. Don't talk to me about Antonio Gibson being massive competition. I actually think Austin Eckler is a bigger upgrade over Gibson than people are giving Eckler credit for. And don't forget this, and this is why I say it's not a great pick. Who is the run game coordinator in Washington? You know the answer to this question.
I do. And he likes Eckler.
It's Anthony Lynn. Anthony Lynn loves him. Some Austin Eckler, former head coach for the Los Angeles Chargers. He drafted Eckler. He got Eckler. I promise you, we don't have Hard Knocks with the Washington Commanders. We have it with the Giants. But I promise you, if we had Hard Knocks offseason with the Commanders, you would see Anthony Lynn in that room with Cliff Kingsbury and Dan Quinn going, get Austin Eckler. So I don't think that this is a backfield that you can separate and redraft. It's going to be messy. And in Dynasty, yes, Eckler is 28 years old. So he's not going to be around forever. But like, look, Brian Robinson, they're not committing to him as the guy. He might be the starter and Eckler might be the third down back, but don't kid yourself. Eckler's going to get worked in with Anthony Lynn a lot more than Brian Robinson managers want. So I'm out on Robinson. I'm out on Hollywood. I'm happy to let other people go ahead and take them. And I'd rather go get some players with higher ceilings and maybe lower ceilings and higher floors, but certainly some higher ceilings than both of those guys combined.
Yeah. Brian Robinson is going to. The one thing I'll say in his not in his defense. It's more like what he could be, because it's not really defending him. It's, of all things, to inspire you to get better at your craft and really make a push. It's the nicest guy on the planet walking in to be your quote unquote backup, except everybody in the building knows him better than you, thinks he's more talented now than you'll ever be, and treats him with respect that you'll probably never get, Mr. Brian Robinson. Everyone looks at your backup as being better than you and always has been. And you can't hate the guy because it's Austin Eckler and he's super nice and you're probably going to be best buds with him. I think that could inspire Brian Robinson in a positive way to go get really good out of necessity, to just not completely cede the job. But I see many versions of the season playing out like we're both in sales in our professional careers. There's a lot of people that have to, pound a lot of the grunt work and tee up a lot of things. And that's extremely important. But I think a lot of us would rather just take the meeting to get the business than make the 20 phone calls to get there. I think Brian Robinson's going to make the 23.5-yard rushes to get Eckler in a position to score 10 fantasy points. I think Eckler's going to have all the high value touches to where Brian Robinson could outsnap Eckler 70-30, and Eckler might still be the better fantasy asset because of the per touch value in a most dynasty leagues or PPR. And I think that's how that finishes. That being said, nothing against Brian Robinson. It's more of a pro Eckler take, if we're being honest, and you're just kind of the brunt of the joke. I hope good things for him, though. I really do. I think he's a good kid, and I think he could do something, but he's got to show it. It's got to be better than last year. The guy has to upgrade himself, and we'll see.
And look, a mobile rookie quarterback's not going to. Yeah, I think it's like you said earlier, there's a lot of questions.
Yeah, I mean, McCaffrey. Well, we know one McCaffrey's better than him at running back, but the wide receiver McCaffrey might be a better running back than him. Who knows? We'll see how that plays out. Be scared. Hey, that was the best and worst picks through 10 rounds. A lot of bonus features, too. I've seen some other content creators kind of come out with this type of a video, and I really love it. If you haven't seen the Big Dog Gotta Eat with Nick Ercolino, they do a really nice version of this. And I want to give some shout outs to some of the guys that do this probably better than we do. I don't know if their takes are better, but their production quality certainly is. And I think you should definitely go check those videos out. But we've got best, worst, and some honorable mentions. So basically, you have 8. You got 4 good and 4 bad takes every round through round 10. If you're doing a startup, this really can function as a pretty good primer if you're a little bit loose to the dynasty streets, or you have your own takes, but you want to temper them and just kind of see if you can find someone, maybe it's us, that you agree with, and can kind of work on that. So hopefully this video series was helpful. Hopefully it wins you some money if you follow it. I know we followed our own advice quite a bit. And that would be awesome if we weren't in like 20 leagues together. And so only one of us can leave with the title. So we're going to see how that plays out. Phil, it's been awesome having you. Really appreciate your takes. This was an awesome video. I think one of our better ones. But before we head out today, you want to tell the people what you have going on and where they can find you?
Yeah, so you can see in the top right-hand corner here, The Extra Point with Phil Ruskin every Thursday night, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 Eastern, live on YouTube. You can also find me on Patreon and Spotify. I'm also a writer for Dynasty Pros, so if you are looking for some articles with written content, some light toilet time reading, as I like to call it, go ahead into dynastyprosfootball.com. You can check out some of my written content there. Otherwise, catch me on The Extra Point live on YouTube Thursday night, 7 p.m. And of course, you can listen along on Patreon and Spotify. Love being on your show, man. I know you've been on my show, but in fact, you're going to be on my show in about an hour here. So I will go take a quick break, and we'll see you in about an hour, brother.
Amen. I am looking forward to it. Hey, a quick shout out. Don't want to throw any shade in his name. Nick Zylak over at the Fantasy Football Advice also has a series very similar, best and worst picks. His is, I believe, redraft, not dynasty, but I was inspired a lot by him coming into these content creator streets. So check him out too. One of the big things I want to do on my show is give back and tell you, if you found me, but you haven't found all the amazing content creators, I watch way too much of all their stuff, but they're so good at what they do. Support the whole industry, support everybody, like and subscribe to everyone who produces fantasy football content, because more people will do it. And we'll see some, much like the sleepers we like to draft, we're going to see them in this industry as well. So go like and check those other videos out as well. And while you're at it, maybe like and subscribe to our channels as well. Help us continue the journey. It's been real. Phil, I'll catch you in an hour on the live stream. YouTube, it's been real. Thanks for chilling at the tavern. We'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.
Thanks.